Many of us who have been legislators or are legislators, certainly my former colleague Marie Parenti, but especially our Congressman Richie Neal, who has been a champion of this project and of many other projects across the former 2nd District. Now that he's out there, he's got number 1 now. He's in the 1st District, and my colleague in the House, Representative Fernandez. Any of us know that the first responsibility of legislators is to listen to their constituents and listen to the people that we have the honor to serve. And as soon as I started running for the Senate in 1996, I certainly heard from Dino DeBartolomeis about the Milford Pond project, and from Marie Parenti, and at the time Frank Andriotti, who lived down next to the pond. Frank was, among others in the neighborhood, would remind us of the odor that would come every time the algae bloomed, that it was almost like living next to the sewer treatment plant because of the stench that would come from that. And so it really affected the quality of life of the neighborhood. But it also, others who had lived there a long time would talk about the recreational opportunities that used to be there, the swimming, the boating, the fishing that could take place. But over the years, like with any body of water, especially where it's not moving fast enough, tends to eutrophy and eventually turn into a swamp and then at best a vernal pool. But they certainly have seen the degradation of that area over the number of years from the time probably in the 40s and 50s when it was still able to be used for active recreation. We've seen, however, the town of Milford has certainly stepped up to the plate in many ways. The Upper Charles Trail project, Reno DeLuzio took the lead, but there's a whole committee of residents that have been involved in that project, and that goes right along the area one side of the pond and has become a real asset to the community. So Congressman Neal, as Dino has said, listened to the local officials, listened to the residents of the area when he became the congressman, and has done really using his experience and his seniority has been very influential in getting the Corps of Engineers' attention and then their financial support through the Congress, and to make this project become kind of the majority partner, I guess, of the team, given both the permitting authority of the Corps and also the funding of the Corps. Representative Fernandez and I have listened to the constituents in the area wanting to get this area cleaned up. And it's been a slow process to make sure to put all of the money together that's needed. Certainly the town of Milford and the town meeting members, but with support of the residents of the town, have been a major partner in this project because they have come up with a good portion of the local share that's required to make this project go. One of the things that I think, we invited the representatives of the Scouts to be with us today, and I'm pleased that they were able to join us because this really is for the future. They represent both environmental interests and concerns, but also the youth of the community who will, as they get a little older, will experience and they and their generation to be able to join and enjoy the benefits of what we're about to do to launch today. It's not only does the local community benefit, the Commonwealth will benefit from this because, as most folks here know, the Milford Pond is part of the upper reaches of the Charles River, which goes all the way to Capital City there in Boston. And so improving the flow through there will improve the quality of water that ultimately makes its way down into the Boston area and into Boston Harbor. So it benefits not only locally, but the Commonwealth as a whole. And certainly the Patrick administration has been very responsive to our requests through this process and has authorized Secretary Bartlett to come forward with the state share of this partnership. So it's really an ideal federal, state, local combination with the full support of the community and the residents who will be most directly affected by this project. And it's really an exciting opportunity to be able to show that the three of us, and prior to John Marie, with our experience of how to get things done through the legislature and with the administration, and our seniority of having the influence with our colleagues to make sure that the support is there to be able to do that and deliver real results for the people of Milford and for the people of this region. So I'd like to begin to recognize we're going to end up with you, Secretary, because you have the cash. So you're not getting out of here until we have the formal transfer. But the person who is probably most responsible for the largest piece of that, of the cash and the approvals of the Corps, which are critical and not always that easy to get, is our former congressman, now leading congressman. I think you're the dean of our delegation. I think you are, and that's important too, to have that. But I told him that we would have given him top billing on the poster in front, but he doesn't have an opponent this year, so we have to be practical about all these things. But ask Congressman Neal to step forward.
Thanks, Dick, very much. And for me, it's a very nostalgic moment just to come by and have a chance to say hello to a town that was so enthusiastic about supporting me. And I thought Dino was terrific because he really was the inspiration that brought this to my attention and did come to Springfield. And I know the people of Milford were suspicious that all of a sudden you were going to have a congressman from Springfield rather than in the Worcester County area. But whether it was Dick or John or Marie, boy, you embraced me. And you embraced me with great enthusiasm. And I never had a close election here, 10 elections. And this is very important to me because I'm going to, for a moment, defend a very important principle. And it's the principle of earmarking. And I understand the criticisms from time to time about earmarking, but not to miss this point. Earmarking comes, as the legislators here know, based upon requests from local government officials. I didn't wake up one day and say, we need an earmark for Milford Pond. And that's how it started, with an earmark in the Water Resources Act. So it was local officials who petitioned their congressman to ask the Army Corps of Engineers, which is deemed with great professionalism. Their budget was just up last week, and you should know I opposed any cuts in their budget because I think they do a great job, as evidenced by what they did here in Milford. But the requests for government spending on the earmarking side overwhelmingly come from local officials, colleges and universities, and hospitals. And Milford Regional enjoyed earmarking from me as well. And I just call that to your attention because people object to federal spending in general, but not in the specific, when they see how it plays out. I took great satisfaction from the fact that I was on a first-name basis with the chief, could call me and I would call him. Town engineer couldn't have been any better in these sorts of projects. So we started this actually probably in about '93. That was my first, I think, opportunity to hear what Dino and others had to say. The selectmen were outstanding. The reps were terrific. Senator Moore couldn't have been any better. And I also want to mention another guy who was just great to me in this town, Lou Bertnazzi. That guy couldn't have been any more helpful to me than he was. And you've really got something special here as Milfordians. I mean, first of all, I even figured out how to call the town Milford. Right? Everybody on the outside is Milford. I said, no, Milford. And that's important because when Dino approached me, one of the things he did that was very important to gain some traction with my memory, he brought photographs, remember, of what it first looked like, what it looked like at one time. So you have all of these people fishing and enjoying themselves with passive and active recreation, but it was really, in my judgment, a gem. And the citizenry, the people that live nearby, they saw this as their priority. So you can petition the federal government through local officials, and that's what we did here today. And I just say this to you as warmly as I can. I really love the people of this town. And if there was any way in reapportionment that I could have kept it, it would have been, for me, a joy. Because you really want to keep communities that you've had a good working relationship with. And this week, and as we close the week, I'm going to be with the governor in Great Barrington, which is a new part of my constituency, but a marvelous part of it as well. And they'll be talking about the Community Development Block Grant allocation, which I'm sure Milford will enjoy a portion of as well. So all of these partnerships, I think, go hand in glove. But I will just say this, and it's important as I close. Your legislators are as good as I have ever come across in Boston. You couldn't get finer people. They've all worked together, and the result is here. So the inspiration comes from the Selectman and Dino, funding comes from the state and the federal government. What a great partnership, and I think it's a success story, not because of me, but because of you. So when I received all these warm words today, I was reminded, I was talking to my daughter over the weekend, and she grew up in politics, and she lives in Newton now, and so she said, what do you got going during the week? I said, I'm going to be in Milford. And she said, well, you only go places where you're adored. I said, I'm going to Milford.
Thank you very much, Congressman. When I first became the senator for Milford in 1996, the representative who was in office at the time was Representative Parenti, and she and I had several meetings, some in her office too, when she was bonding chair, with Dino and with members of the Milford Pond Committee, the engineers and others, to take this project on and work on it, and we were able to get some initial money for it as well through the budget and through the bond issues. And certainly, since John has succeeded her as state representative, John and I have worked together on this project as well to make sure that we would finally get this to closure, so that we have finally, with this contribution from the state, we'll have the package together for funding and demonstration certainly of local as well as state and federal support to move this project forward. So it's my pleasure to introduce my House colleague, Representative John Fernandez.
Thank you, Senator Moore. I'm a little taller than the senator, although when this project started, he was 6 feet tall and I had dark hair. So I don't know if people really do comprehend how difficult it is to get a project like this to completion. How many, Tom mentioned it, how many times along the way you hit tripwires that feel like they're going to just be too much to get across. And I'm looking at the pond project board over there, which I guess should be out front so you can all take a closer look at it. But I remember a meeting in here several years ago where we were talking about the cost of removal of the materials and trying to transfer those materials away, and how that was going to kill the project because of the enormous cost of trying to do that. And so through the work of all the people involved, an alternative was developed so that some of that could be used on site, and a way in which to make the project continue to go forward. If you don't, there are certain projects like the bike trail, like this project, that if you don't have somebody who takes this on in almost a legacy kind of way, it just doesn't happen. So you think of the bike trail, you think of Reno DeLuzio. If it wasn't for Reno's tenacity, that bike trail, all of us help in one way, because you have to, because if you don't take the phone call from Reno, he's coming to your house. If you don't do that, he's coming to your office, and pull the sheets back to make sure he's not there when you go to bed at night, because that's the kind of commitment people have to this type of project. And we did that with National Grid when it was the bike trail. Dino's been that same way on this project. And to the extent that some folks think length of time in office is somehow a disqualification, well, it's really not. Because if you don't have people willing to commit, then these projects will fall off the vine. Because there just won't be that kind of passion that single person has. Can't do it alone. Dino could never have done this alone. None of us can. But through the support of people like yourself that are in here and those that have passed, Emilio, when you think of people like Lou Bertonazzi's got a very familiar history with the neighborhood, Marie, Dick, and certainly Congressman Neal, can't thank you enough for the commitment you've made to this community generally and to this project in particular, because the Army Corps really was linchpin to making this thing happen. There's no question about it. Mike, your work over the years on this, outstanding. It's just a pleasure to be a small part of it, and an honor to be a small part of it, because growing up in the community, you see a community like Milford grow, and the residential neighborhoods start to absorb all the land, and then the commercial and professional and industrial starts to absorb all the land. And if you're not careful about preserving, then you lose the character of the community. And so when you think about things like the bike trail, you think about things like Draper Park, you think about the other projects that have been done in this town, even the reclaiming of the Charles River, which is an ongoing project. These are important to the legacy of the community and the character of the community, the viability of the community. So small honor for me to be a part of this, to have helped with the partnership of advocacy and to the Patrick administration. You just have to understand, to the senator's point, to the congressman's point relative to earmarks, every legislator has a really good project, or 2, or 4, or 10, or 12, that they want done. And there just really isn't enough money. So these pieces of money that we can direct in what I consider to be very specific local aid that isn't somehow covered someplace else, this is important. And when you can do it on the federal level like that, when we can convince the administration of the importance of using some grant money here to help offset these very expensive projects, I've got to be very grateful to the administration and to you, Madam Secretary, for the help with this. So thank you all for your work on this. Dino, been a friend since childhood. This really is something you should be very proud of for all the work you put into this over the years. And you'll be the last person to say that about yourself, so let us do it for you. Thank you very much.
Well, no one that I've ever met anyway enjoys and wants to rush up to pay their taxes. But it's important for all of us, and particularly for those who represent the community, to be able to make sure that the community as a whole, and certainly the people in it, get value for what they do pay in taxes. And I think this project is one where there is obvious value to it, and one that is a good return to the people of Milford. To make sure that this money would have gone somewhere else. There's certainly plenty of needs, as John mentioned, around the state for additional help from the state, and the requests are seemingly never-ending. But we have to go to bat for our communities when we represent them, and it's easy to do that. And Congressman talked about earmarks, and some of the earmarks that I know he never offered, but some of his colleagues in the past would offer, and they end up as the Golden Fleece Award, I think, with some rather strange projects that might come out of that. At least their value is not as obvious as in this particular project. But the Patrick administration has been supportive, certainly from the beginning. Secretary Sullivan first, and now Secretary Bartlett have been strongly behind this project, and certainly the governor's office itself has been supportive and very helpful in making sure that the state would make its commitment. And when Dino and Mike, I know Mike Centura, and some of the committee members came to Boston most recently, about 2 years ago, and the Secretary Sullivan at the time said to Dino, "Well, what do you need?" And Dino said, "Well, $250,000 wouldn't be bad." And so he said, "Well, let's see if we can find it." And we've been able to, of course, at the time, the state budget was not looking as good as it is today, and it is better off, and we're making some progress as a state as well. But even then, this money still is not easily attained, but thankfully, through the administration, we've been able to make sure that this was freed up for it. And it's a pleasure. This is still one of your early responsibilities as the actual secretary, although you've been in the department before, and so it's a pleasure for you to join with us. This is probably the best part of the job, is to be able to provide the resources for a very critical environmental project. So it's my pleasure to introduce our Secretary of Environmental Affairs, Maeve Valley Bartlett.
Thank you, Senator Moore. It's a great pleasure to be here in Milford. It is, as the Senator said, the best part of my job to go around in the Commonwealth and help with projects that are of such importance to the local communities. And thank you, Congressman Neal and Representative Fernandez, and Dino, thank you very much for that, laying out the groundwork of how hard it was to get this done, but how wonderful it is that it is. So I am very happy to be here on behalf of the Patrick administration, and EEA is pleased to provide $250,000 to help Milford with this project. The funding will assist the town with dredging, technical assistance, and inspections. But as many of the speakers have touched on, the real beauty of this project is that it is such a wonderful example of a local community getting together, identifying the issue, bringing it to the state legislators, the state administration, and Congressman Neal really working with the Army Corps to get it done. As some of the speakers have touched on too, it is a shining example of all of your interests and Governor Patrick's commitment to creating a better Commonwealth for the future. And as Senator Moore had pointed out, the scouts in the background make that absolutely clear. EEAs, one of their strongest elements is that we make investments in the communities, particularly in projects involving wildlife habitat and endangered species. And because of all of these partners, Milford Pond will once again flourish as the habitat for endangered and threatened species. My staff gave me a list of them, but I can barely pronounce half of them, so I'm just going to leave it at endangered species in general. The enrichment of Milford Pond will develop a healthier local environment, but also be a source of education and wonder for the natural world. As children, adults, bird watchers, amateur nature enthusiasts, and just your average citizen visit the pond, open space like Milford has a positive impact on the environment, but on the economy as well. The Trust for Public Lands has recently put out a report that says that outdoor recreation generates $10 billion in consumer spending, $739 million in state and local tax revenue, and $3.5 billion in wages and salaries each year in Massachusetts. And Milford Pond hopefully will have the same type of benefit here in Milford as people come to enjoy the pond. Projects like Milford Pond represent simple, good sense. But all of you folks who started this project knew that many years ago when you first started. And I thank you for that. The Commonwealth values these types of projects because they're a product of real and meaningful partnership. I think everyone has touched on that point. I can stand here today because we have great partners in Milford. As we've said, the Congressman, Senator, the Representative, Dino, all of the good people of Milford. And it's good for Milford, but it is also very, very good for Massachusetts. And thank you all for inviting me here today.
I don't know if anyone has any questions about that, but I'm sure the secretary and the project manager and the town engineer will be around here for a little while. Oh, okay. Do you want to come up here? Because I think the Milford Cable TV will appreciate your using the microphone.
Thank you. It's actually an honor for me to be able to speak today because, as you know, I've only been in this position for a little more than a year. So a lot of the heavy lifting was done by my predecessor, Mike Santora, who is here today, as well as Dino. Dino asked me to speak today about what the next steps are. And we have been very, very fortunate working with the Army Corps of Engineers. They've helped us get through the permitting process on the federal end, and we've been very fortunate with the regulators at the state of Massachusetts as well. They've been very supportive of this project, and we are very, very, very close to getting a record of decision from MIPA. It should be issued today or tomorrow.
I just signed it.
You just signed it, yes. We have a record of decision. Thank you. And that will free us up to get our other state permits and our local permits that we need so that we can proceed with bidding this project. So our plan is to put the project out to bid this summer, award a contract before the end of the federal fiscal year, so before September 30th. And hopefully the contractor that is chosen will start with the building of the areas where the replication will take place in the fall. And then in the spring, as soon as the weather allows, start the dredging of the pond. Our intention is to dredge the pond within one season, and hopefully the pond will project will be done and open to the public in the spring or summer of 2016. So that's the plan going forward. We have a lot of work to do still, but this is a really, really exciting project. And like I said, I'm very grateful to be able to work on it. And then the town, after the project is done, the town will maintain the pond as part of their agreement with the Army Corps. That will include treating for invasive weeds, that sort of thing, probably stocking the pond with fish so that we can improve the deep water habitat of the pond. And then other potential stormwater improvements, because as everybody knows, stormwater is a big issue in Milford as well. And this project will have a very large positive impact on stormwater issues in Milford. So thank you very much to everyone who has helped this project and has pushed it along throughout all the years.
Well, again, we want to thank everyone for attending, and particularly all the folks that had a role in one way or another in this project, both up here and in the audience, and some who aren't here as well, who were certainly contributors to this successful project. And we know that under the leadership of the town engineer and the project manager and with the Corps of Engineers, that we will have a really outstanding project, and one that is a resource for the community and for the state that will be developed. So it's we will. I think that really answered all the questions that anyone had probably with regard to the project, and so we'll be around for a little bit longer. And Dino baked last night. He was up all night baking for the refreshments and the coffee that's outside. So please, John. I saw John come in with a few little plastic bags. I think he's taking some home to the family. But to make sure that you have a coffee and a snack or something on the way as well. It's we don't want to. Dino's, it's an old family recipe that he's used, so we want to make sure that you take advantage of that. But thank you all for coming. This is a great day for Milford.